Hello and welcome to DungeonCast, news and discussion from across the tabletop. So today we've got one of our first DM Roundtable sessions. We wanted to bring to you a bit of a conversation about how to be a DM, how to create a campaign setting, and how to run games. And this is the first of a series of episodes where we'll bring you some information and some guidance on how you can do that, and hopefully it will be helpful. I've got some new faces in the dungeon today, so we've got Ben and Rich, and we're all members of the St Albans Roleplaying Club, which has been going for about 15 years now. And we've all run lots of games and had lots of different types of players, lots of different experiences. So we thought we'd share some of our experience with you. So if you're new to running games, then hopefully this will help you. And if you have run games yourself, then maybe there's a few tips in here that you can take. Before we start, I'd just like to say, if below in the video description, we'll have links to all of our other videos. We've got some RPG actual plays going on. We've got Bloodbowl videos coming and Arkham horror card game series as well that's started. So check out the links below. Also subscribe to the channel so you get alerts as to when our next episodes of this come up, and hopefully you can stay tuned and get something out of it. So today we're going to talk about creating campaigns, and we've had a bit of a chat beforehand, and our three areas we're going to cover off today are bottom up versus top down, which we'll go into in a minute, theme and mood, and then the experience of your players and what kind of players you have. So we'll kick off. So our first topic was bottom up versus top down. So you're a new DM, you've decided you want to create a campaign, and really the question is, where do I start?
It's a tough one. What you've got to do is decide whether you've got a setting that you really want to tell a story in, which if you're picking up a preset setting, like you're picking up Star Wars roleplay, you're picking up something Middle-earth based, or any of those things, then you've already set that you're making a plot to fit that setting. Or you've got a story you want to tell, and then you've got to come up with an environment you want to tell it in, which is...
Yeah, that's interesting, because you could come up with a kind of local idea for an adventure, something, a town or a city or a particular bad guy that you really want to use, and then you would have to try and figure out what setting that might fit into. You might have an idea for a fantasy city that you could sort of fit into another setting. You may not. You may then want to build your own setting around it.
Exactly. Like I said, if you've got pre-made settings as well, that limits you straight away on what stories you can tell, what characters you can use to an extent as well, depending on how well developed those existing settings are. So
I think if you're starting from nothing, you need to decide whether you're going to be starting based on the world and what's going on in it, or whether you're starting with the players and what's going on around them. So the characters and what's going on around them is going to be like a local area setting, a town, a village, even a building. But if you're looking at what's going on in the whole world situation and how the players are then going to interact with that, then you need to start from a much bigger world view. And it's going to impact everything from your religion to your social politics, technology, use of magic and or technology, interchangeable depending on whether you're doing sci-fi or fantasy. So a lot of things that you need to consider. And as a first-time GM, you've really got to look at, where do you want to come from? Do you want to come from heaven up, heaven down, or do you want to start from the streets up?
I think when I first started running games, I would do it from a local point of view. I think generally because I was also picking up a setting that was already out there. So I'd flesh out a very local area, the kind of bottom-up approach. And then as the game went on, I would kind of expand out and create new things or pick up the bits from the setting. I think now that I've had a bit more time doing it, 27 odd years, I, like you said earlier on, actually, I get a bit stuck in the Tolkien mindset.
It's very easy.
You create a whole world and you're very busy figuring out what the dark corners of places are and sort of writing lots of things out before you've even thought about what the players are actually going to be doing.
And that's where predefined settings come in really helpful, especially for a newer GM. You're not having to take that time. you don't have to draw maps of entire cities. If you're doing stuff in the Forgotten Realms type things, you've got city maps there. There's so many resources out there. You can pick them up and you can drop your story into that. As long as you haven't got too much of your plot already defined, then you can drop that straight on and use that as the overlay for it, which takes a lot of the work away if you're not used to
I've
doing
got
that.
to say, I've never been a fan of pre-existing settings. I mean, I like reading them. I like seeing how they get set out and everything. I don't actually like running games in them. I find them too prescriptive. So I very, very much will create a whole world every time I create a campaign. Now, how much of it is a different story. So, case in point, at the minute I'm running a game for some of my students who may end up watching this. And for them, I'm not giving anything away. I wanted to give them like a sandbox experience. So I started off with just a town. And then in the very first session, I sent them out of the town to go and find out what was going on. And then depending on where they go, I'm evolving the world out from there.
Sure.
So I've got my original town and I've got my historical stuff behind that. But then moving on from that, it's where they go and what they choose to do. So that's one of our player experience things for later.
Procedural generation.
But at the same time, I assume you'll have an idea of the wider political things going on.
Yes, absolutely.
So it can be good to have a high-level approach for some of the world themes to say, what are the main religions? What are the big things going on? Where are the big cities or the more powerful NPCs? Who are they? Who's the king, for example? You need to know the name of the king. If you keep talking about the king and they say who's the king and you don't have something, then you're caught short. But then have your high level kind of layer, but then drill down into something where you can say this is the defined space for players to kind of exist in. So from my personal point of view, I would say it's neither bottom up or top down. It's kind of a mixture of both. You need to have an idea of what's the big thing. There's a continent. You don't need to draw every city on the continent. You need to know where the city they're in is on the continent, and then go into that in a bit more detail. And then you can, as you said, as they start to adventure, you can kind of branch out and
build it out from there. I do think that building it out from the starting point is a good idea because it means that you can develop places almost as the players encounter them. So as the characters encounter them. So as the character reaches the next phase in the story, when they go from the little village to the nearby town to the city to the capital city, you build up that country as you go through that. And then when you get to that point and you start looking on an international scale, you can add the other countries around it, whereas before you need to know they existed. Because people are going to have prejudices and existing thoughts and feelings about them. They may be, we don't like them people from that country to the west because whatever. There you go. There's your token prejudice with the comedy peasant rural accent.
Exactly, mate. It's the scope of your story. If the scope of your story is never going to extend beyond one city, then there's not a massive requirement on you to put lots of work into developing what's going on everywhere else on a planet. Because that's not going to be relevant to the story you're telling.
You'll need to know the high themes, but not all the detail.
Exactly. It's background, it's flavour, and you can add it in and drop it in, and you can drop in new bits. If the entire campaign is based on them roaming across an entire continent, then you're going to
need to do some prep work.
You need to do quite a lot more prep work. You need lots of towns and villages and cities.
Also,
maps.
You don't need to work out all the details of the cities and the guild masters and the mayors and the burgomasters and the tavern keepers of everywhere.
No, you just need a long list of names on a piece of paper. And when they encounter a new person, you go down to the next name and they'll say, what's the name of the guard that we're talking to? And they don't need to know the name of the guard. They're never going to encounter that guard again, but you will have your little sheet. I always have that. That's just one of my tips. Okay.
And it stops you struggling for a name, which is just it makes you look less prepared than you maybe are.
Takes
or exactly as prepared as you are, depending on.
Cool. Okay, so in the question of bottom up versus top down, there's a kind of a duality that needs to go on. We think. Okay.
I think the two questions tend to answer each other as well. If you start developing a plot, then that plot has a framework to it anyway. If you're telling a story about overthrowing a tyrant, then that already sets the tone that there is a tyrant in place to be overthrown, and that starts to set the entirety of the mood.
Okay, cool. So hopefully that gives people a starting point to think about, okay, what's the big stuff going on in my world? Just some bullet points, really. And then where is this going to start? So let's drill into that area and let's start to create an adventure. So then moving on from that, I think, unless anyone had anything else.
No, I think we could run the risk of just talking
about
that one thing. Yeah.
Oh yeah. If you have any other questions, put them in the comments below, and we'll do our best to get back and respond to those in following videos. But then I think really the question is, what's the theme and the mood of your setting? And there's a lot that can go into this, isn't there? And it's about being able to describe to your players what kind of game you're going to run. So it may be in a city, but is it an intrigue story, or is it running through the streets fighting a rebellion kind of thing? What kind of thing are we looking at? That's really the next kind of
chase type adventure where everything's happening as fast as it can, or is, like I said, is it an espionage type environment where everything has to be slower and more considered? What type of characters are you doing as well? Are they heroes? Are they going out to be heroes? Or are they people who've just stumbled across? Which is a completely different.
And sometimes if you're picking up a setting, that can sort of promote one over another. World of Darkness games have a very different approach to Dungeons and Dragons. The high heroic thing in Dungeons and Dragons, or the kind of more intriguey social kind of thing going on in.
That said, I think a lot of my formative GMing years, sort of the 20 to 30 age range, centered around a very episodic format. I mean, I know it's one we still use quite a lot of at the club. And I always used to work on sort of two models. Is this an episodic series-based game, or is this a big film that's running start to finish? So I think the episodic nature of a lot of gaming lends itself very well to certain types of story. And particularly when it comes to, purely from a fantasy perspective, when you're looking at it, you can either say this is going to be more like a fantasy like Game of Thrones, where it's gritty, it's dark, everyone dies. And then at the far end of the spectrum, you've got your sort of Shannara Chronicles. It's pretty, it's light, it's fluffy, everybody lives. Except that one character who you knew was going to die from way back when, because it was kind of obvious.
But that is important to touch on as well. It's a big part of a theme and a mood, how likely characters and non-player characters are to die. I mean, that's a really important thing to convey early on.
Threat level.
Setting that threat level.
How do you feel about player characters dying, and how do they feel about their characters dying on a regular or semi-regular basis? Because there's a fair amount of investment in characters from players, and
absolutely, and people get really attached to them. And when you kill a whole party of players in one episode, then they often get a bit annoyed. Not that I've ever done that before.
There may be
once. I did it once.
Just once. I've done it once.
Maybe a slightly lower attendance for your next session.
It was an accident. I didn't mean it.
I think that question. I mean, if you're doing a fantasy game, you need to think: is it high fantasy? Are all my players going to be the heroes, or is it a low fantasy world and they're kind of the commoners who have stumbled on the plot kind of thing? If you've got science fiction, you've got a fairly similar kind of question to ask. Is it the Star Wars I'm the Last Jedi kind of thing?
Or is it Star Trek you're a guy in a red shirt?
Exactly. Don't be a guy in a red shirt. That's not good. Then you have to not mind about character deaths.
I mean, personally, I don't like character death. I think character death, if it's going to exist at all, needs to serve a purpose in story. It shouldn't be something that happens by accident or randomly. If there is going to be a character death, it needs to be something that is relevant and essential to the ongoing story. Because otherwise that player, as you said, what's their motivation in coming back next week?
Well, precisely. And I think it's almost something that you should discuss with the player away from the table and say, actually, possibly you're not feeling the characters giving you as much as they could. Got a hint that you might prefer a different type of character. Actually, it helps to develop the story as well. Are you happy for your character
to join that
to
together?
take this route? Rather than steal it away.
There are GMs out there who view it very much as an us v them situation.
Yes.
And the killing of players is a win for the GM, but I am not one of those people. I completely disagree with that whole model.
I don't feel that running a campaign for a group of players should in any way be an adversarial or competitive environment.
No.
It's a vehicle for telling a story, and you're using dice and games mechanics as a way of telling that story and developing it and adding an
it's collaborative
of random excitement to it.
Yeah, I've had players actually come to me with a character whose arc is their death for a reason.
Yeah.
And that's been an amazing opportunity for me to then build that into the story.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And that
when
kind
you've
of
got
thing.
that. When you've got a character that is
Paul at the club, awesome.
Destined to die.
It's really interesting where you set that. Yeah.
Well, if you look in White Wolf is a prime example of that. They've specifically written into the setting the flawed dark fate.
Yes. Yeah.
Which, by its inherent nature means your character is going to die. And it's a really great way of signalling to the GM.
Yeah.
At some point, I want my character to die in the most horrific and gruesome way imaginable, in a way that serves the story.
Yep.
So something like that is actually a really good hint to the GM that you're okay with character death. And I think that was a brilliant innovation in gaming. The addition of that sort of flag to tell GMs, I don't mind if I die. Fantastic.
Yes. I mean, in GURPS, there's is it unlucky? I think, and it's something where every session the GM gets to do something horrible to you.
Yeah.
I mean, these kinds of things, they kind of,
Then
some
also in
games
GURPS
have
there
them.
is free sick.
Yeah.
You're essentially, like you say, you're telegraphing being open to more of the GM's interpretation of your character and your character's destiny, and wanting to take hold of that, and it's a big step to take as a player, and lots of players, aren't prepared for it. Don't, like you say, they get very attached to an individual character, and they develop that character, especially over longer running campaigns as well. If you've got campaigns that are running once a week for a year, suddenly snuffing out that character on the vagaries of one individual dice roll.
Especially if you're
no
8 months
of,
into that year.
Yeah, exactly. With no chance of redeeming that character's fate. It's
absolutely.
It's harsh, and it's not necessarily.
I think what you were saying earlier on about taking it away from the table is a really good thing. I say I've just started a new D&D campaign which is on the channel, and I sat down with the guys beforehand for a few hours and just talked through the themes of the world, the geography, all those kinds of things, to talk through what kind, not just the details of the world, but the kind of story that I wanted to tell. And then the guys got a really good feeling of what kind of characters they should then be working towards, and they were already starting thinking about their long-term kind of what they want to do. So. Yeah,
very much so. If you're intending to run a story which is that high fantasy, you want the characters to be out to save the world. They're meant to be beacons of goodness and virtue to those around them. Then there's no benefit to the campaign from someone deciding they want to create an assassin. There's very little benefit to having that character in the group. That character in the group instantly creates
you'd have to work
friction between the story and the characters. And
you'd have to work to make it work.
That doesn't mean it's not a good character concept. It just means it's not a good character concept for that story. And likewise, it doesn't make it a bad story. It just means that the story doesn't mesh with the character.
Sure.
It's worth balancing that up.
Yeah, it's good to give them the heads up on the mood before they create characters as well.
But when we come to mood, we're starting diverging from what we were going to talk about, aren't we, really? Whether it's low or high, whether it's going to be gritty, grim, dark, heroic, and stuff like that. Personally, my preference is for heroic high fantasy. And same applies in science fiction settings, heroic high sci-fi. So if you're doing sci-fi, I like my sci-fi to be faster than light, battle suits.
Sure.
Powerful
spaceships
lasers,
flying everywhere, laser
spaceships
cannons.
flying everywhere. Lots of use of polonium science, so you
Yep.
don't actually have to worry about it.
Technobabble generator that you can
Psychics, space wizards,
Yeah.
what have you,
Yeah,
all that kind of
laser
thing.
swords.
Yeah, that's your high fantasy sci-fi, and I love that as much as I like the high fantasy Tolkien style of gaming. I know it's not for everybody. I know some people really prefer a sort of grim and gritty, everything's muddy, everyone is always just slogging through ankle-deep horse poop the whole time. And some people really enjoy that style of game. It's just, I must admit, it's not for me.
Again, it's not my. I've played in those games. I've run games along that vein, and I don't find it really gives the same level of enjoyment for me. And from that, if you're running a campaign, it won't give your players the same level of enjoyment as well. You've got to be honest with yourself about what you enjoy doing. You know, if I'm running a campaign about heroes, I want them to be heroic. I want them to you know, hear that someone's got a problem with a monster. They want to go off and confront that monster. That's not them going, whew, that sounds a bit hairy there. Let's go off to the other village. That's not what a campaign about heroes is about.
No. Yeah, absolutely. But then I think we're starting to get into our final kind of
the
point
experience
for this.
of players. And,
but
they're all linked points, which is why they all fit into.
Absolutely. I think you need to deliver the kind of view of your setting and the theme and the mood to your players in a way that enables them to build the characters, so they're going to get the most out of the game.
I think the St Albans Club actually provides a really interesting model for that, because we've got GMs who have their own specific styles, and they almost develop followings. In some ways, you get players who
should probably go through the process at the club.
Go.
All right.
So every few months, we will have a changeover day, and this normally following a bank holiday. And what we'll do is, for a few weeks before that, people will be coming up with ideas for games they want to run.
Next one's the first week in January, kids. If you want to join in, that's the time to come along.
At the Goat Inn in St Albans on is it Sopwell Lane? Sopwell Road or something? But yeah, you can see that at the St Albans Roleplaying Club Facebook page. You go there as well. Sorry, social media whore. And then basically all the GMs step up and then pitch their game to the awaiting mass of we've got about 30 odd people now at the club, haven't we? Every week. So you normally get between 4 and 6 DMs who are going to step up, and then they give a bit of a pitch of the broad themes, then the specifics, then the mood, and then the theme. So we're kind of following a similar pattern to
all those things we've talked about so far. All tie into how really a decent pitch would be delivered, because what you want to present is a 90 to 120 second movie trailer type announcement.
Yeah, absolutely.
In this setting, this is happening.
And then end it with Nazi dinosaurs, and everyone joins your game.
But in so doing, it means we've got people who have got a bit of a history of running grimdark games, and they get the players who want to be in grimdark games. We've got the realistic gamers who want to do realistic games. We've got sci-fi gamers who want to do sci-fi games, and
people who make their own games and turn up every time trying to tout their own game.
People always trying to tout their own game. But people know what they're getting in for, and if you get a new player, that's when the experience of the players bit really comes into its own. Because for the most part, everybody knows what they're getting into, but every once in a while you get a couple of people who come along, join up, and it's them that you need to manage the experience for. So what are they looking for? What do they want? What sort of games are they into? But also, what's their previous experience? I mean, if you've got a player who's got a previous experience of nothing, or a player who's got a previous experience of Monty Hall campaigns where every time they open a box it's full of magic swords, you've got to be able to leverage that experience. You've got to leverage that experience somehow into your game. So having an idea where your players are coming from, if you get a bunch of the grimdark players join your game one session, you might need to
veer off slightly towards the darkness.
You need to steer your direction to you can't define entirely the direction of a campaign yourself.
As soon as you put it in front of the players and they're actually playing the characters, it goes left field anyway.
But you need to know
you need to know roughly where that left field's going to be. So you know they're going to veer towards the dark side, or they want to be more heroic. That kind of thing. I think it's really important to get an idea of what your characters want out of it, as you're saying.
Well, I made a terrible mistake many years ago. The first time I decided to run a superhero game, and I thought I would run a slight anti-hero bent on the game. We were running a Baron. And so I said I wanted all of the players to start off as criminals in prison. Now, what I meant by that and what the players interpreted from that were completely different things. I meant I kind of wanted them to be unjustly imprisoned, white collar criminals, harm none, but be a kind of bad guy that got caught and arrested. And what I ended up
had
with,
been led astray, possibly looking for some redemption in his life.
And what I ended
How
up
many
with
murderers
was,
did you have?
well, it wasn't. I had no murderers. Well, unless you count the genocide guy.
Okay, the
I
genocide
had a
guy.
genocidal murderer. I had a terrorist for hire, and I was like, but the first session was supposed to be breaking these guys out of prison to serve the common good.
Yeah.
I didn't want to break them out. I wanted these guys to stay in prison. They were actually bad people, and it's because I didn't leverage the experience of the players.
Exactly.
I say criminals. They took it to the dark side, and I was expecting something different to what they were expecting.
This is that movie trailer really defining it, giving people a really good idea of what they can expect from a 2-minute description.
Yeah.
Or a half-hour description.
Yeah,
so I mean,
you
players,
get different opportunity, don't you?
You've got a different window of opportunity, but you've got to be able to present exactly what your goals are, so that people can either say, "That's not for me," or "How can we tweak it?" It's collaborative. It's not.
Yeah, and it's always it's important to remember that as well, that players will often have good ideas that you can steal and pretend they were always things you were thinking of doing anyway. So it's always good to talk through it with them before you just turn up to the first session and say, right, let's go. Where are your characters? We're getting on with it.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Any more on leveraging experience of players? Or do we think
I think it's good to have an idea of what experiences your players have had before as well. Yeah. What type of GMs have they played with? If you've got a new player to your group, or you're running with different groups every couple of months, like the St Albans Club, then it's really good to have an idea where your players think the experience is at as well, what they're used to. As you said, you get some players who are used to every time they open a treasure chest, it's full of magic swords and armour.
Yeah.
Others are used to every treasure chest having a trap in it, and every trap can potentially kill you.
Yes.
And
leading to some people having a no traps rule.
Exactly. Some GMs, myself included, will say, I'm not going to do traps, because it slows down the entire campaign when everyone's sneaking along every corridor going, I'm going to check every 10 feet for every
because
trap.
as soon as you put one trap in,
as soon as you put one trap in, it derails the entire thing. And
I often like to use traps, just to talk about traps briefly. I often like to have traps, but they are flagged ahead of time.
Yeah.
So they're often things like in a ruined temple with iconography on the wall that gives you a clue as to, like Indiana Jones, you've got the penitent man will pass.
Something like that actually
kneels
enriches
and
the
does a forward roll.
But if you've got the every 10 feet check for traps situation, that takes away from the game.
Yeah.
Now, I think with players and experience, one of the other things you need to try and provide is something new for everybody. So if you whether you've got a really experienced group or a really inexperienced group, you need to give them something to make your game memorable as well.
Sure.
Something that they can take away as a new experience.
Yeah, I mean, we'd all hope each story is at least comparatively new.
Yeah.
In some of its elements, you don't want to be telling the same story.
Sure.
Over and over.
Sure.
Unless you've got kids and you like watching their cartoons with them, which is the same story over and over.
Yeah. Cool.
Otherwise, the 18th time you watch Frozen, it loses some of its impact. But likewise,
no, the 18th
you want to be telling a new story.
Subtle
The story doesn't have to be entirely new if the setting's new. If you're telling a different twist on an old story,
you can take a story you've used before and move it from fantasy to sci-fi, and then you've already got a difference.
A lot of the things
and
we
then
all like to play with
what you said
relatively
there,
common.
With the cartoon thing as well, that is something else that you can use almost as a model. Is this a Saturday morning cartoon game? Or is this a post-watershed Game of Thrones, sex and drugs and rock and roll?
Yeah.
Spectacular. It's certainly worth knowing the difference before you start indulging.
And that's actually not something that I would often have considered.
Yeah.
Until you'd actually phrased it like that. So that's something that's worth throwing in.
And that's down to your player group as well. If your player group includes a broader spectrum of ages, let's say.
Yes.
The club at the Goat, actually, everyone's over 18. They tend to be a more mature crowd. If you've got a younger crowd, you're going to want to pitch appropriately as well. You may want to dial back some of those themes.
Yep.
And also keep a rein on enthusiasm for some of those themes as well.
I
think that's the nicest way to phrase it. You might want to get people just to keep some of those themes in check on their own side as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
I run quite a lot of games for kids. So I'm a teacher. Hi, sorry. And as a result, I've ended up running quite a lot of games for teenagers and young people. And actually sort of giving the notice up in front of sort of an age certificate for the game, I find helps quite a lot.
Yeah.
So when you've got an adult group, you can say this is going to be an 18 certificate game, or a 15 certificate game, to give an idea of what
or rated R
sort
if you're
of,
in America.
Sorry,
Yeah.
to sort of give an idea of the sort of themes that are safe to use and aren't safe to use. So I tend to say with kids when I'm running a game at school is that this is going to be a maximum of a 15 certificate game.
That's good.
So we'll cut out excess profanity,
sexual themes,
violence, while it will happen because it's an inherent part of the game, is much more like cartoon violence
and not gratuitous torture and things like that. Okay.
And there's a good deal less
contextual, not pure spike violence.
Yeah, and evil takes on a different tone as well. Evil in an adult game shouldn't be the sort of moustache twirling,
Dick Dastardly
kind of evil. But in a game for kids, that's exactly what evil should be like.
Mocking monologues, that kind of thing. Yeah.
The more mature your setting, the harder it should be able to tell who the bad guy is early on.
Yeah, definitely.
From the outset, there should be far more granular shifts between.
Yeah, you certainly don't want to be able to tell that the wizard on top of the mountain who's sacrificing all of those children so he can turn into a dragon is doing that.
That would be
that's probably not one of the good guys.
Isn't that the guy you wanted to team up with?
No, he wanted to team up.
Yeah. Hey, that went well. That campaign.
That's good.
Cool. Okay,
Excellent.
So I think we've just hit the half-hour mark. So we'll probably bring that one to a close. But as you can see, there's a lot of thinking that goes into it before you even start thinking about the adventures that you're running, the characters that they're building, thinking about your setting, your theme, the mood of the game, and what your players have experienced previously and what you want them to experience in this new campaign. All those things you need to think about and talk to your players about it. Don't do that in isolation. Really getting feedback from them about, if they want to go with it in a particular way, then that can really help you sort of flesh it out in a certain direction.
Particularly at the end of a campaign, I know what we've been talking about is developing a campaign and a setting and a plot. But at the end of a campaign, get some feedback, find out which things people did and didn't like, and try and mesh that. Give yourself some feedback as well, what you did and didn't like. Had you shoehorned and pigeonholed yourself into a particular route that you may want to avoid in future. It's really important for being able to make sure you and your players get more out of it next time. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Excellent. I think that will be the end of our first episode. Thanks for watching. If you've stayed all the way through, please like the video, comment below. If you've got any questions, then please pop them down there. Subscribe to the channel, as I said before, because next time we're going to be talking about hooks, plot events, and the perils of the sandbox, which sounds very perilous.
It does.
But until next time, thanks for joining us. Thanks for being here, guys, to talk through it. And we'll see you again in the dungeon.